Welcome to the Consummate Athlete Podcast, where we explore what it means to be a well-rounded, happy, goal-crushing athlete. Every week, myself, sports journalist Molly Herford, and cycling coach and kinesiologist Peter Glassford interview experts and chat through all of your training questions. We're excited to have you along for the ride. Hello. Welcome back to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. Peter, how's it going?
It's going well. I don't know. I feel like I should almost ask you if you have plans for next year, because everyone's been asking what Molly's big plans for 2026 are.
You know what the problem is? I think the more I say I don't have plans, the more people think that I have some kind of super secret plan.
Well, as I said to you yesterday, I think it's just everyone's excited and knows that you've had some good success, so it's a good place to be. So you don't have any reveals for anyone, including your husband, who's trying to keep up and plan?
No big reveals, yeah.
Okay.
It's funny though, I was at a race, hanging out, not racing, just helping with a bit of announcing and just kind of catching up with some friends. And I was talking to one woman who raced the Sulphur Springs 100 not with me, but like she raced it. She did the 100. And she and I were talking about she's going to do a 300 miler next year, which...
Only a 300 miler.
I know, right?
This inflation is killing me.
I know. I was like, in this economy.
People are wild. I always say, when I see these things, I'm just like, the things people do is just...
So that was not my like soft launch of me doing a 300. But she was actually telling me, she was telling her partner, or she had signed up and then she had to break the news to her partner. And she was like, so I told him he better sit down for this. And we were joking how when you're an ultra runner, there's like a few reasons you tell your partner that they need to sit down. And number one, and the most common reason, is usually, so I've signed up for a race, which means you've signed up for a race.
And a whole year of, yes, preparing.
Well, and I do have to say, like, I think that's part of the reason I haven't really picked another goal, is partially because anything over 100K, I do think requires your partner or someone to be very much along for the ride if you want to have the kind of result that I want to have. Like, I think you can do them solo. My friend John does a lot of his with no crew, no pacer, just kind of like DIYing it. And I know a lot of people that do it that way. Even our good friend Karen, who's a really, really good 100-mile racer, has done some of them without a pacer, but with crew though. So kind of irregardless, like you kind of almost need to have at least one person with you for the race when you're over 100K to be successful.
For the running, yeah. And I'm trying to think of a similar point in biking. It's like almost in that like 100-mile too. Like it would be, people do them self-supported or just using the aid stations or drop bags. These systems are all in place for sure, but
it's not how you win races, unfortunately.
Yeah, or like your personal bests, and I don't know. It's a tricky one, but you're right. Like a lot of these things, you're probably traveling. You maybe want to bring people along. Not everyone wants to go to these things alone either. So yeah, it's a commitment.
So when I think about what I'm doing next, part of my question is like, do I want to bring you along for the ride, which sounds meaner than I actually mean it to. Like, it's actually a positive. Like, do I want to put you through another 100? Do I want to put us through another 100? And like, that is genuinely a good question. I know you would do it.
I think we like doing these things, but I think you want to make sure that it's the thing you want to do. And but this is the time of year. I think the reason I brought this up was not so that we could have a discussion for our family, as much as like I think this is the time of year where a lot of people are wondering what to do next year and what investment that means in all these all the different meanings of investment, time and energy, and another year of your life, and while you can do it, what you want to spend that time on. And it's a little tricky decision. I always think of these things as time goes by either way. So while it is, you do have to make a choice. It's all going to be good, I think, in the end.
Well, and you just said investment and you mentioned time, but like money is a huge factor, right? Like people keep asking if I'm going to go back and do Leadville, for example. And if we lived in Boulder, the answer would be like, absolutely. I'll be there next weekend. Like, sure.
You think so? I bet you'd be less likely to do it if you lived in Boulder.
No, I would absolutely go back the next year. But for us to do it well, like that's looking at like a 6-figure kind of spend, like low 6-figure, like 10 grand.
Oh, okay. I was
Sorry,
like
that's
six.
that's five
Yeah,
figures.
I was like six figures.
If we had the decimals in there, I don't know. Sorry, it's at least $10,000 to do it the way that I want to, where it is like you're traveling there early, you're staying there for a couple weeks, you have to go qualify for it. So, you know, when I'm factoring that in, like that's not cheap. We don't live near any of the races. Sure. We don't live at altitude. So it's an expensive endeavor. And I don't know that that's a cost I'm willing to bear again at the moment. Anyway, so yeah, I think we'll probably kind of head into our goal setting time of year pretty soon, but definitely, yeah, the wheels are turning. I just don't have a good answer.
Okay. Well, like you say, I'm sure we'll do at least one of those as we get towards the new year. We do love a good goal setting and New Year's episode.
Love it.
I guess maybe if I pulled on that a little bit, like, what do you think? I guess you list out the options. Like, what would be some homework, do you think, that we could do for both of us, since we both have to sort of do this? Like, I guess we would sort of look at what's coming. You know, I see like there are a couple new races or like races are returning for next year. So now I'm starting to think, oh, maybe I want to go do these races. And I'm lucky I get to see all the races because I have so many people that we coach and do plans for. So I have all of them. So it's sort of like writing out like the top ones that are possible even, I guess. And then I always think about maybe you write out family events that we know, whether it's weddings or different things that might be on someone's yearly schedule. You already know that you're going to this thing, or these weekends are off limits, work has these things, and that sort of eliminates the races. And then it's sort of, you have these cluster, right? And then you sort of want to think, I don't know, I almost want to like put them on the wall, or this is like a vision board where like which one's really like drawing you or like in your mind or scares you. Is there anything else that I'm missing there as far as like if someone were going to start putting these goals on, what do you think?
Well, I think even backing up like from the races themselves, that for people listening to this podcast, we are talking to the consummate athlete crowd here. So I think discipline is even part of it. I think that's probably part of my.
What do you mean discipline?
Like, could I go into gravel cycling?
Oh, I see. I thought you meant like discipline.
No, this is not the Jocko show. Thank you very much. Okay. No, like, for me, 100-miler is not necessarily like in the cards for next year, even though that's what I did. Like, I've always skipped around endurance sports. So part of me is like, maybe I do make my triumphant return to cyclocross.
Oh, I see. So you're going to get that lifetime
lifetime series here. Yeah.
You know what's less disruptive than 100-mile running race?
Many cycling
9
events.
gravel races.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, seriously, like I keep talking about how I want to ride bikes again more. So maybe something like Mid-South, where it is the running race the day before and then the gravel race. Like that's actually kind of cool.
Okay.
So who knows?
So it's all on the table. Okay.
All on the table.
Nice.
I do think now that we are in our new office, I'm feeling like we could do a whiteboard wall here.
Okay.
Just putting it out there.
Sure.
Anyway, today we're talking about HRV and recovery and all these fun things, because I think the conversation of goals is important to have almost before that, because it does tease into it. It's pretty hard to goal set and think about what's next and all of that when you're kind of in a weird moment with recovery, with HRV, with any of this stuff, when you are kind of in a phase of coming back from something. So.
Sure. And maybe it gives context, right? Like I almost look at those are like the two ends of if we drew a line from like where you are to your goal, it's sort of like HRV for today at least, or the trend is like right now. And then you have a goal, and the proximity to that goal probably determines how much that HRV is an issue, or you're feeling right now is an issue.
So we're actually working on an update to our book, Becoming a Consummate Athlete, that came out in 2020. We're working on a new edition just with some new stuff, but it's funny going through it. The first chapter we have is where are you now and where do you want to go? So the first chapter talks about it's really important before you start goal setting or like figuring out what you need to do to get to your goal. You have to be pretty clear about where you are at the moment. You can't really make a roadmap if you know your destination, but you're actually not sure where you are on the map.
Yeah. Yeah. And Dan John has some great stuff around that, like determining where you are. And so it's usually people fall into two categories where they either need to define where they are because they don't know, like what is the gaps, is sort of like a gaps analysis. This could be testing. because like you have to orient yourself on a map. You can know that I want to get to California or wherever you want to go on this map. But if you don't know where you are on the map's completely useless, right? And then on the flip side, what we were just talking about is goal setting, where it's like, well, you have the map, you know where you are on the map, but then you don't, like, I'll go anywhere, right? And then it's, well, any road's going to lead you there if you go anywhere. So that's why goal setting is sort of like an important thing, is because if you don't set a heading, you don't like call the pocket you're going to put the pool ball in. What's that? Is that calling the pocket? Calling your shot type thing, I guess? Like if you don't say, I'm going to try and finish Leadville, then, well, you can just train however you want. It doesn't really matter.
Or if you don't say Uno when you have one card left, apparently.
I don't know. What is that? You got to call it.
You have to call you're going to win Uno.
Okay. Well, that's an odd sports reference.
Well, my niece made me play it the other weekend and quickly learned why Molly does not play games.
I actually did tie that Uno into something the other day.
Good job.
Oh, we were talking about this random bike game that we play with kids. Yeah, I'm doing this bike program with sort of like the local YMCA and Hop On. I think I might have mentioned that in a past podcast. And one of the games is basically like, it's like baseball, but it's not really baseball because there's no ball. But you sort of like go around a diamond-shaped thing, like bases in the baseball. And it's sort of like, what is the game? But I guess the game is basically Uno. Like I finally figured out I read like fine print in the book. And so we were talking about, and the one coach who's learning as part of this is really into Uno. So they really liked this. But
yeah. Well, she can play with our niece instead.
Yeah, the long story short is like once you've been to all the bases, like when you're going to the last base, you got to sprint to that base basically, but you sort of like know, and then you yell home run, I think is what you yell. It's a very sort of like odd game. But anyhow. Uno, sports. So where were we going with that? So we're sort of point A, point B. You want to define those 2 points, and that's sort of like a mission of this fall time or your off season, whatever type of sport you're doing, whatever your off season is. Before you get going, you want to sort of like redefine where you are. We just did a podcast on testing in the fall. That might be a reason, is that you don't really know where you are and how much you need to improve or what your gaps would be. This could be, again, a holistic look at like all the different gaps in your health, your fitness, your injury status, all these things. These could be assessments that were done so that you know, like, what could I improve? Could I shore up some weaknesses or close some gaps? That's what gaps analysis is, to move towards that goal.
Perfect. Okay, so with that in mind, the question we got in today was around HRV and what HRV is sort of telling you. So HRV, heart rate variability, and this is what a lot of whether we're talking about the Aura or the Whoop, or even now just a lot of the fitness watches do it automatically. Apple Watch, I think, does it automatically.
Yeah, and we talked about Coros we've been liking. Not that we're sponsored by them. We just really have liked their products. But the Garmin does them, and the Coros has it as well. I have like a little graph on my watch that pops up and shows me random things.
We also love Marco Altini's HRV for Training app. That's the one that we've used and recommended over the years.
Probably 10 years now. And Marco has a great Substack. If I try and refer people to it when they start getting into the nitty gritty and pretending, like they want to get into it, is like he writes an article every week only about HRV, and it has all the like basics and then all the like nuance and the extras and what do you need to know about the hardware. So like, is your strap like valid? What does today, if one day is off, like any question you could think of HRV, that man has covered in his Substack. And he's just such a nice dude. And the app has, again, just been, it's simple, it's open. Like we like it because it's open and tells you things like the how reliable your signal was, which something like a Whoop doesn't give that to you. So you don't even know if it's like valid data day to day. So that would be, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of answering the question yet, but we like HRV for Training and his Substack, which I'll link to. Marco Altini Substack will probably get you there.
Now, the reason for HRV and all this is really all of these apps have some kind of readiness score, readiness metric. Now, I guess before we get into the exact question, I think it is worth kind of a quick exploration of asking yourself, what is your why for wearing one of these straps, using one of these straps? Now, I'll say you and I come at it from probably a similar angle, but different in that I don't track HRV at all.
You don't wear it. The difference
in that
being
I don't do
you
it.
Don't wear it.
Which is it's a choice that I have like made over and over again. I've tried it.
Yeah, you've done trials. You have an article where you wore every single one, I think, at once.
Yeah, there was one point where I had I think 8 different wearables on. And I think I lasted 3 days before I was just I hate all
I think you did most of the month, but some of them you had to remove.
Yeah. So I am not a big wearable person. I am not a big HRV person. I am very big on how I feel. And I think I'm pretty well in tune with how I feel and pretty good at that. Do I wish I was better at collecting data? Yes, because like I would like to have. I'm jealous of the fact that you have a decade of HRV for training data to look back on. I've just never been good at being consistent with it, and it just doesn't fit with. It's just not a habit that I'm happy doing.
Yeah. Well, so we have a couple things. I don't know if we'll read those. You can decide if we'll read sort of like the scenarios. The end result is both of them basically say, I think I'm going to die.
Well, I think first, like, why do you track it?
Yeah. So I think that there's a couple things that practically is like when I start feeling that I'm going to die, I've had a bad run or something like that. I use it as like a confirmation that like those feelings, so like another thing is saying that like something is off. And an important thing with HRV and heart rate is that it's not always like higher or lower for either of them is better. It's that it's like out of your what does Marco call that? The baseline. So there's like a range, just sort of like your training zones. So it just undulates day to day. There's variation for any number of reasons, but it's when it gets too big. The difference is too big, right? So it's sort of like when you're in your training zones, it can undulate, say, 5%. You're doing your zone 2. Zone 2 is from 57 to 77% of FTP. It's 20% of your FTP. It's quite wide, depending, for most people, it's quite wide. So with HRV, there would be a similar like error bars that it's just normal, and then, this is out of it. And then, this has been out of it for like a few days versus months before where it was like in the zone, in the range, in the baseline, and then boom, disrupted. Now, what could that be? That could be some during a period, like a woman's period, that could be off during that. It could be stressful period at school or work.
Now he's talking about the time, not the menstruation.
Oh, well, I mean, it could be
Sorry,
both.
You said period.
And then like it could just any of these, right? So the nice thing about HRV and resting heart rate is that they can be affected by numerous things. The bad thing is that they can be affected by numerous things. So you can't say, even say you have a race on Sunday and it's really hard, and then on Monday your HRV and heart rate are out of the range. Likely it's because of that, but it could also be any other number of things, ranging from sleep to you're really nervous about work this morning, or the kids got you up an hour earlier. It could be lots of different things that send that off. So it's not always clear. In the race example, it probably is. And the thing is, your training plan probably would suggest taking it easy the day after a race anyhow, right? So we would assume that would come back to baseline. But to your question, what I usually find is that it confirms if I'm not getting back on, I'm starting to get sick, then it was like, that is out of range. So I tend to go at it as a secondary where I'm feeling bad or I've had a couple bad workouts, then that is also then like confirming that something's off. And then that would be a support to say, because I don't want to take rest days. I don't want to, go away from my plan. But that would be the thing that says, like this is a second or third thing that's saying something's weird here. Just take a couple extra days, like take it easy. Try and do, how can I be healthier? This is that Greg Lehman question of like filling our cup or draining our cup, I guess, less stress in the stress cup. So can I eat better? Can I do some yoga? Can I do some deep breathing? Can I get to bed earlier? Can eat better, go for a walk and relax, try and have the conversation that's been stressing you out. All of these things to try and just reduce the stress analogy. Cup is probably the best analogy, right? Like how can we drain that cup, empty, have a little bit less on our plate, and then we should find that we come back to baseline. So I do have a couple other, but I'll break for because that was a long ramble. But that would be like as a confirmation.
I like it. I think the important thing here is if you get stressed about the number, this is helping no one.
Well, yeah, if it's stressing you, then like this is where the metric doesn't make any sense because now you were doing this thing to see if you get stressed. And now you're getting stressed about the thing.
I think this became a big thing with sleep in the last couple of years that finally people actually started talking about in a very like legit way, where if you keep getting stressed about your sleep score to the point where it's affecting your sleep, it's not very helpful to track your sleep. So I think that's why I don't track mine, is because much like weight, I know that the results are going to end up triggering me one way or another.
Yeah.
So I just opt out. I don't get on a scale and I don't track HRV.
Yeah. And I think in some of it, so the second thing would be then like, if you look back over the trends for months and years, potentially, it could be interesting. So, we were moving house over this last 3 or 4 months. And so I was like, wow, like it just seemed like looking back, not today's, but like over the last month, it did seem like there was a trend. And I was like, wow, I wonder like what this is. Like I feel pretty fit on the bike. Like there's none of these primary measures where my performance was fine, what I expected or even better. I thought I was doing okay, but then the HRV was actually like lower. So it was a really odd thing. And I think it was just like a bit of low level, like just we had a bunch of stuff going on. So now what will be interesting, I'm not going to look for that to like, oh, the house closed, we're in it, we've unpacked. But will it come back up? It'll be interesting. That could also be 41 and it might just be like something that changes this year, right? That's also possible. But I look at it more with curiosity, and especially because again, notice that it was like a secondary thing that like upon my monthly review, I looked back and I was like, oh, weird. Like it doesn't usually like, I sometimes get a drop. I'll get to my third thing in a second because of fitness. But in this case, I think it was actually like some of this, like just other stuff going on. So that would be another place where it's like sort of interesting. And then you could bring it back and say like, okay, well, now you're not selling a house. Like, is your HRV coming back up? Or is it something else? Like potentially it could it flag something like a low-level infection or any other number of things? I don't know, because those primary things should always, like, I'm looking, I think I look okay, I think I feel okay, I think I perform okay. So it's sort of that, like, I don't know what you do with it, right? Like, maybe that's just the way it is. It's hard to say.
Okay, so I think the other question, and we kind of alluded to this before, is if you are using a wearable, or even Marco's thing, if the HRV for training app, if you're using them, how much do you trust them? How much do you believe in them? And how much are you willing to change your training for them? Because I think there's a lot of people that when they get a number they don't like or a readiness score that they don't like, they ignore it, try to explain it away as like something that's minor so they don't need to change their training. Or, they're doing a training plan and they don't want to change their training. And honestly, they shouldn't, because there are some times where like the point is to train tired. So you actually should have a lower readiness. Like when you have 2 back-to-back long runs,
right? Yeah.
Your whoop may tell you that you're not ready to do your second long run, but the point was to do a long run while tired.
Sure. Sure. Or like I saw Vanderpool, it was actually late in the tour, but he was posting his whoop stuff contractually, obviously. But his was actually pretty stable for like a while, which like he's an amazing athlete. So like case in point, like Marco would say that his physiology is adapting to, or is not adapting, but is absorbing, right? It's recovering from the thing. So even if he had a bad sleep, or even if because he did this big tour stage, you shouldn't penalize him if his body is actually adapting. So that's where like having just the HRV numbers is really nice. But I think he then posted in the last week, I think eventually even the, one of the greatest cyclists of all time, he just posted like skull and crossbones, and it was like 2 or something like that, whatever the score he was reporting. But
well, that does tend to happen to Vanderpool when, like 14-year-olds are knocking on his door and playing Ding Dong Ditch.
Well, that wasn't this time. This was at the tour. But all that to say, I think he still started the tour the next day and still did great. But it was like, okay, the physiology is slowly not being able to adapt to this, right? So interesting, but not unexpected. And then also he just had to keep sort of going at it. And maybe they made adjustments in his recovery protocol or what he was doing in that day on the tour. Like maybe they try and have him sit in a bit or something. But at some point you have to go, right? Like and then you recover afterwards.
Yeah. So I think ultimately my question with anyone using any of these and basing anything off of them is, how much are you trusting it? Are you going to listen to it? Are you listening to it? And if you're not listening to it, then, or you're not trusting it, then why are you wearing it? And I do think
paying for it.
Or paying for it. Cause like this stuff isn't cheap. And it does seem to be like the kind of thing that becomes this like habitual thing that athletes now are doing and assuming that it's a healthy habit, even though they're not actually doing anything with the information. It's sort of like this stand-in for like seemingly healthy habit. It seems like a good thing to do, but if you're not actually doing anything with it, then there's not really a great point to it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I would say like the reasons are still not like so compelling that like a big spend on it for the average person probably doesn't make sense. We like Marco's thing because it's like $14 once, and you can just keep doing it. And so it, like the cost is very low. I think about it as my morning meditation for a minute or two in the morning. It's really,
to say don't pay for it, don't do it. If you have the funds and like you enjoy the data, then by all means do your thing.
Yeah, but I think like anything, you know, we were talking to a couple athletes about just even this time of year is a great year to cycle out of supplements and anything that you're taking that you can, you know, this is not medical advice, but if it's just a supplement you decided to take, then you can stop taking it, presumably. So this would even be creatine or these other things that are popular right now, is to just see like, what do you notice, and like give your body a bit of like a cleansing period, if you will. That would be similar with the HRV stuff or any of these data, is to just like reflect on these things for sure. And it's like whether they're serving you. But I'll put in, I had another sort of item there I was thinking is the other thing that I do like it for is I find that as I finish off my endurance blocks of the year, so your quote unquote base, I do notice that like that HRV will like also start tracking with that. And that's not true for everyone. And not everyone can push volume so high or has that response physiologically, but I find it's like quite strong that it almost in the same way you'd see something like the TSS metrics in the performance manager chart sort of increase, sort of as I get into, say, in a classic year. It could be coming into the spring as my fitness sort of peaks, if you will, like the at least the volume peaks, and I've started absorbing that really well. Usually that HRV also is up. And then sort of related to that, for me, I find that as I start getting too fatigued, which can come in hand with that, my resting heart rate then starts getting very low and depressed. And again, so then I can sort of like, okay, I need to take a recovery day or keep the volume a little lower. And then usually I'll see that resting heart rate come back, but then the HRV is usually, again, maintained in my baseline, even though that baseline's crept up over the course of months. So that would be a way that I would look at those long-term trends, but then also with that resting heart rate, sort of give a sense of like, I'm feeling a little slow. I might feel fit, but I start to feel a little slow. And then that resting heart rate and maybe even exercise heart rate being depressed or suppressed is also something that like you can really watch for. So not to derail what you were saying there as far as whether it's useful, but that would be things that you'd want to be like having an eye on. But as you say, being able to take action on it. Will you take, you have 4 hours on the schedule. Will you do 90 minutes instead? And I think the answer for most people is probably no. They probably don't have the bandwidth to do that in their life, like with the schedule they have, or they're not willing to actually like diverge from the plan.
Yeah. So just, what are you going to do with it? I think it's really just an important question before you get into it. Okay. So do we want to touch on these exact questions here?
I think so. Yeah. Like maybe just, even if you want to.
I'll paraphrase.
Yeah. The first one there is more of like someone who goes to school.
Okay. So this one, we're talking about two different things. We're talking about resting heart rate and then HRV. So resting heart rate is getting much higher. HRV is dropping. Okay. Read more details? Or?
Well, and it's September or like early October now. So this presumably this person's gone back and they're doing a school sport as well. Probably started late August realistically, but like into September would be like ramping up and probably even competition season for some of these school sports. Pretty high level, right? But also we have that school in the background. As much as we want to say like we're only athletes, you are whatever you are, a student, a daughter, a mother, a husband, executive, whatever you are, all those things are going to feed into those two metrics. And September is often a transition month.
And we had a really good episode back in July with Dr. Scott Fry talking about neuroscience and a bit kind of in the sports psychology, but more in like the here's what's actually happening to your brain realm. And we talked a lot about how stress is stress is stress. Mm-hmm. And that isn't actually even a bad thing necessarily, especially for an athlete. You can actually see this as a positive. But I mean, yeah, like there's no, you don't have like a secondary heart and lungs that are doing the exercise while the other heart and lungs are doing the everything else.
So with the school sports, I think this is just sometimes you're in it. So, but they noted that like what I would say the primary subjective measures, so how they're feeling, the muscular soreness. We've talked in the past about muscular soreness is not captured by wearables, but it's actually probably the most indicative thing of performance. So if you have fatigue high, muscular soreness is high, perceived like recovery is low, you're not recovering as fast as you think you are, or you're just not recovering quickly. And then if paces or powers are also affected, then these are signs of like your body needs more recovery. So this could be reducing the training load. This could be lower intensity, just keeping it aerobic, which I think is always a great option. Aerobic training does tend to increase HRV and lower heart rate. So when in doubt, this would be like an honest zone 2, but we'll call it endurance, low intensity. Steady load, not surging, I think is a great option to include. So a lot of people think that I'm going to say like take time off, but sometimes taking time off can also have that same effect. So what you'll also see is people end up not training as much, which this person mentioned maybe 4 to 7 days. I don't think that's the case in this situation, but you could see someone who's not getting enough stimulation, maybe from their hot summer, lots of training. Maybe as a student, we're training 6 and 7 times a week at something else. We don't necessarily know. And now they've actually decreased their load. So then you could actually see someone detraining, which you could see that response of the resting heart rate coming up as we detrain, and the HRV coming. That's the effect I see. Not everyone sees that in their metrics, but that would be again. And then it's like to Molly's point, well, when is the goal? And we started sort of on that with the podcast, right? Where maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe that was the plan, was to detrain on the fall, which is hard for any athlete to hear, but we do have to detrain and come off of the competitive season as well. So we want to look at that context.
Yeah. And this actually it's funny how everything kind of comes back to the same answer. Thinking about the testing that we talked about last week, I think a lot of the time we all assume that we should be as good as our past selves. We should be doing the same thing as our past selves. We should be able to do the same thing as our past selves. But it could also be like your current self right now, the 4 days a week is actually like too much for yourself right now, whether it's because of school, whether it's because of
you're coming back from injury or childbirth or whatever. Like we've have people in all of these situations where you just aren't the same person, and that's fine and great. And so we go back into sport and the training process and learn and we're curious with it. It's very hard because you know that past self is always there. But that would be the thing is, this week has to be easy, and easy doesn't mean that you underperform. I think that's always, I've had people through like whole cyclocross seasons, like basically only do aerobic and then the cyclocross races as they came. And they do great. Like we've put that challenge out to people a few times to do like a classic Maffetone endurance only couple months in the fall. And I don't know, I think most people would learn a lot about themselves, but also see pretty good progress. I don't think you can train like that. I'm not saying that high intensity is very important, but I don't think we always have to be doing it. And especially in this situation where there is a school sport in the background, it might just be like if you're trying to fit strength or intervals or intensity or practice races or team practices, as well as 1 or 2 or 3 races, like it's very quickly that's how a lot of these school things are. It's just, we have to fill the time. You only get like, I know cross country running is certainly like that. Every practice is a full send, and then they have to get the races in before the weather goes. So that would be the thing, is as much as you can, like, can you back off those days a little bit? It's a tricky one, but I think it's just if you're going to use these metrics, then you want to guide yourself a little bit by them and be curious. Like if I do a couple extra aerobic sessions, honest aerobic sessions, do I see that these things normalize and then my performance is better and I'm feeling better? Well, there you go. You were curious and you found it an answer. I think that's an awesome way to look at it.
And any thoughts on that resting heart rate being higher? 'Cause I first think there's also a chance the data itself is just not super accurate.
Well, and that's what I said, like the September school transition, potentially you're recording in a different area. Now, Marco always talks about the morning reading versus the overnight reading. Most people are doing like a continuous or overnight reading that the device is just deciding when and how it's pulling out any of these metrics.
Well, and some of these devices are now doing like full day. It's not even just at night.
And so Marcos,
if you're running to classes and like figuring out your schedule for the first time for the season, like all that stuff, like I wouldn't be shocked if like you have so many surges and like higher heart rates like in the first class, getting to the first class, all that stuff that it did.
Now, obviously, you know, the Whoop and the auras and stuff, like they know that this is an issue with ongoing measurement. So they have ways to normalize this. Like they probably are looking for like at night and then a period of, they take periods that there isn't movement. They can sense movement and acceleration in the watch. So they're obviously not just like recording your HRV when you're running to class, but I do think that
resting heart rate is what we're talking about.
Right. So they wouldn't probably record it, but that there is that risk. And then there's also the risk that like something is off or the watch isn't quite touching your skin. The watches are quite subject because they're just shining a light through your tissue compared to something like a chest heart rate strap that's actually sensing like electrical signal. So the risk can be quite subject, especially for very small people, right? Where there isn't a lot of tissue that's on. So again, these companies are aware of that, and their hardware keeps getting better and better. It's not a criticism of them, but when we're looking at data, we do want to say, how confident are we in the data quality? And has anything changed in the context in this period of question? Because this person could be, maybe now they're sleeping with someone, or they're not sleeping with someone, or it's a different bed, or they're just really not sleeping in the new environment, or the temperature's been so warm this fall, and so it's been super hot in their dorm room. So there's just so many things that could potentially throw this off, and then still might not affect the performance. Now, we had the primary things that they are finding, that they're sore and injured. So in this case, this is Molly's initial question of like, why are you recording? Like, do you want to use this data to adjust your training? Well, it's giving you all the signals and the alarms. So again, we go back to, usually it's a good idea to just do low intensity training, and you should find that things improve if we do that and fuel appropriately. And then probably just reiterating the Greg Lehman like cup analogy with the, how can we be healthier? Insert, go to therapy, can we eat better, more for an endurance athlete and a young athlete, especially, is usually the answer, especially early in the day. So trying to bump up the size of breakfast, even doing things like Ensure, I think is like Ensure high calorie on top of breakfast or as like a snack soon thereafter. And just see, like, this is the greasy car salesman, 2 weeks. Give me 2 weeks of just like an extra whey shake and an extra banana at breakfast. And fueling all the workouts. And just, if you don't like it, go back. You can go back to the old way, but like try and see if you do better, right? Or replace one of your workouts with a classic zone 2. Really read up on zone 2, listen to the Pagacha interview, and then just like really buy into zone 2 and learn about it and see, like, for 2 weeks, and just see if you feel better.
Okay, love it. Now, you had this other example. Do you want me to read that?
Yes, this one's after a race.
Okay, so after the race, did a couple of very easy rides. Days following, just let the body catch up. Knew they were kind of in that overreaching going into it, which I assume was sort of the plan. But HRV and heart rate are resting are saying that this person is going to die. So I assume just like red zone, tanked, like.
Right.
I honestly hope one of these apps has like a skull and crossbones that comes up at some point. Like,
yeah,
it's like red, and then just like skull and crossbones.
So I want to be careful again that people are sort of taking away this. There's the scores, which again, you can read Marco's Substack, and he's always very careful that, like, we're talking about HRV and heart rate, which we love. The first athlete said, this is the heart rate and this is the HRV. This is a single measurement. Whereas the scores are like these amalgams of like a bunch of different stuff that it's sort of estimating and creating. So Marco is very careful that, like, when it's those black box combination of metrics, you don't actually know why you have the skull and crossbones red, like flashing, don't train today at all. Reading, if it's HR or heart rate and HRV, at least those are measurements. Then we can make a decision based on where that is on the trend across like months and years potentially. If it's just a score out of 100, that's a bunch of things, your sleep quality, how much you exercise the day before, that's where it's getting tricky, where again, Van der Poel in the first stages of the tour was doing fine. So if his score got affected because he rode 7 hours the day before, but he was recovering fine, then Marco would say like that's actually a problem. If his HRV and then heart rate were still in range, his physiology is adapting. So all that should tell you is that like your physiology is adapting. It shouldn't comment on how much exercise he did the day before when giving that advice. So he's careful that we don't want to do that. So in this case, if this person's watch is telling them they're dying because they did an 8-hour tag team the day before, I'd want to be careful that it's the day after a tag team 8-hour, so we want to be careful and just take rest anyhow. You probably should be tired after that, but then we can watch the heart rate and the HRV and the feeling and the subsequent days, right? And base that, and cross-reference that. This person actually fell too. So the interesting thing that I've seen too is after some of these like concussions and that sort of stuff, that would be another place where this could potentially be useful, is whether it's actually detecting the stress that your body's going through after that. I have seen that where it actually is like something happens, crash or whatever, and then it sort of gives this feedback of like when maybe you could start back training. Not so much that you always follow the concussion protocol, return to sport progression, but just that it would be another thing in the background there, where if you weren't feeling right still and you were sort of like, I don't know if I should ride today, then it would be another thing where it's sort of like, maybe just give it another day and see in the background, because you'd have that historical data to compare to. So I have seen that as an interesting thing, whether it's concussion or just like a crash, right? Your body's going through a ton of stress if you've just even scraped yourself all up or something like that too. So in this person's thing, I think the caution is that you're probably not dying, but just think about your context. But again, it might be, if it is telling you that, this might be a good sign when this person's come back to baseline, that they could then ease back into training. Again, maybe a zone 2 ride to start, shake out the legs, say on the Wednesday or the Thursday after a big endurance race like that. And then you'd get a sign, okay, how am I feeling, right? And that would be where the HRV could work in tandem with the plan to say, oh yeah, we've recovered back by Wednesday or Thursday. And then let's get out and see, nothing fancy, but like get out and see how the body's feeling.
Love it. All right. Well, I think let's wrap up there on HRV. Again, hit us up with questions over at consummateathlete.com. We have an anonymous question form, or you can always find us on Instagram at consummateathlete. Keep those questions coming. Start thinking about your goals. Happy training, and we will see you next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. If you want to hear more training, racing, and endurance sport advice, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating and review. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at consummateathlete.com for a weekly dose of inspiration and advice straight to your inbox.